So guys, the Cowboys are getting ready for preseason game 2 against the Arizona Cardinals. And at this point, I don't think this is going to be just another meaningless preseason game. Because after weeks of training camp, 2 joint practices, and everything we saw in that first preseason game, Dallas has reached the point where potential isn't enough anymore. Jaishawn Barham's back from that groin injury, and he's already getting first-team reps at Mike linebacker. Camden and Jonathan Mingo are fighting over a receiver spot that might not exist for both of them much longer. And there's a tackle about to play a side of the line he's never played before in a real game. These aren't small storylines, guys. These are the battles that decide who's actually on this team come September, and even determine whether Dallas needs to look outside the building for help. So, when this game is over, I think we're going to have a much better idea of where this roster really stands. What's up, Cowboys? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, let's talk about why this specific game matters so much. That first preseason game against Seattle gave us an early look, and then you had 2 joint practices on top of that where we got to see these guys against outside competition. But here's the thing about the third preseason game. By the time we get there, it's mostly going to be your deep roster guys, your practice squad hopefuls, guys who are already on the outside looking in. So really, when you think about it, this Cardinals game is probably the last real shot for a lot of these bubble guys to make their case. If there's still a question mark next to your name after Saturday night, honestly, I don't love your chances of sticking around. So yeah, I think this is one of the most important evaluation games we're going to see all preseason, and I think Arizona's going to give us a lot of answers. So let's start with Jaishawn Barham, because I don't think people realize how big this is. This isn't just about whether some rookie makes the 53. This dude is affecting the first-team defense right now. He missed almost a week of practice with that groin thing, and the second he came back, they put him right back in with the ones, as a rookie. At Mike linebacker, which, I mean, that's about as demanding a position mentally as you can play on defense. So I'm not just going to be watching his stat line Saturday night, I'm watching how many snaps he gets and, more importantly, when they pull him. Because if he's out there for like 7 snaps to start the game and they yank him right after, to me that's basically them saying, look, we already know what we've got, we don't want to risk him. But if he's still out there deep into the second quarter, maybe even the second half, that tells you they're actually testing him, seeing if he can hold up as a full-time linebacker. And honestly, either one of those outcomes tells us something real. If he looks comfortable out there, it could completely change how they build that whole linebacker room. And look, it's not just Barham back there. You've got Curtis Robinson, who had 8 tackles last week playing the mic, and Justin Barron, who's been flying around making plays too. Those 2 have been making it hard to ignore them. And then there's Shemar James, who was kind of on a snap count last week, and I gotta wonder if Robinson and Barron playing the way they have been makes his spot a little less safe than we thought. So really the question with Barham isn't just, is he good? It's, is this an exciting little rookie package, or is Dallas actually stumbling onto a real every down defensive piece? Now let's get into one of the toughest calls on this whole roster, and that's Camden versus Jonathan Mingo. Mingo's got real things going for him. He's a 4th-round pick. He's got actual NFL gains under his belt. He's played special teams before. He's got the size teams look for at receiver 5. That's a real path. But then you've got Brown, who scored a touchdown last week against Seattle, and then, next series, was out there on the kickoff team trying to show he can help in that phase too. Brown's had splash plays. He's clearly got the quarterback's trust. You hear guys talk about how when the offense needs a play, they find him. But here's the deal. Brown's got to prove that breakout wasn't just one really good preseason performance. It's got to be consistent, and that's where special teams comes in, because that's genuinely going to be a factor in this decision. If Dallas keeps 6 receivers, fine, maybe there's room for both. But keeping 6 at receiver means you're probably light somewhere else. Tight end, running back, maybe the offensive line room takes a hit. So I don't think this is a keep both guys and move on situation. Right now, I'd say Mingo's got the job. Brown's got to go take it from him, and Saturday night might be his best chance to actually do that. All right, let's shift over to running back because, man, this might be the messiest position battle on the entire roster. Jaydon and Phil Mafah have both missed practice time with injuries, shoulder for Blue, chest for Mafah, and meanwhile, Malik Davis just keeps doing his job every single time they put him out there. That's what makes Arizona such a big deal for this group. If Davis goes out there again and looks like the most reliable, most complete back on the field, Dallas has got a real question to answer. How much longer do you keep betting on upside when the guy who's actually producing is right there in front of you? And here's the bigger issue. If none of these guys convince the coaching staff they've got a real RB2 sitting on this roster right now, the answer to that problem might not even be on the team. That's when you start hearing about the waiver wire, maybe a trade, looking at some of these other rosters around the league that are a little deep at running back. So, Saturday's not just about who wins the backfield job. It might tell us whether Dallas needs to go shopping. Now, here's where this game stops being just about roster battles and starts exposing an actual need. I'm talking about offensive tackle. Drew Shelton's starting at left tackle, and Nate Thomas is going to get run at both left and right tackle, which, by the way, this is basically the first time in his career he's playing right tackle in a real game. That's a big ask on short notice. And look, the reason this even matters is because of what's going on with Terence Steele. You keep hearing the coaching staff talk about wanting more consistency out of him, having these long conversations about his technique. So, the real question isn't whether Shelton or Thomas is walking in and taking that job away from him tomorrow. Nobody's saying that. The real question is, does Dallas actually trust anybody behind him if something goes wrong? And if Shelton or Thomas struggle out there Saturday, I think it becomes pretty obvious, pretty fast, that this team needs to be looking outside the building at that position too. Now, let's talk edge rusher for a second, because I think this one's about numbers as much as talent. You already know your top guys are locked in. That room's mostly set at the top. The real question is, what happens behind them? You've got James Houston, Tyrus Wheat, Sam Williams, Maris Lufau, a handful of guys all kind of fighting for what might be the last spot, if there even is one. And it's not really about who's the best of that group. It's about whether any of them play well enough Saturday that Dallas feels like they have to keep a sixth edge rusher. Because every extra spot at edge is one less spot somewhere else. Receiver, safety, linebacker, take your pick. So this isn't really a who wins question. It's a does anybody force their hand question. Same exact logic applies to the secondary, and I'm going to lump corner and safety together here because it's really the same story playing out twice. At corner, you've got Kalen Carson, Josh Butler, Devin Moore, all trying to lock down that last outside spot, and if none of them really separate themselves, don't be shocked if Dallas goes and adds a veteran from outside. At safety, it's Julius Wood and Elijah Clark trying to prove they belong against Malik Hooker's experience and, honestly, his track record of just not making big mistakes. And that's really the tension at both spots. Do you protect the guy who's been there, done that, or do you roll with the younger player who brings more upside and more juice on special teams? And you know, this is where Christian Parker's fingerprints are all over it, because from what I've heard, he genuinely values smart, dependable defenders who aren't going to blow an assignment. That's going to factor into every one of these calls. Okay, last one, and I saved this for a reason. Joe Milton. He doesn't need another highlight reel performance Saturday night. He doesn't need 2 touchdown passes or some crazy deep ball. What he needs is consistency. Clean footwork, good decisions, staying in rhythm in that pocket, not putting the ball in danger. Dallas already knows what his ceiling looks like. We saw it against Seattle. What they're trying to find out now is whether his floor is something they can actually trust. And if he goes out there Saturday and does it again, I think it makes the quarterback 2 decision a whole lot easier for this coaching staff. So, here's where I land on all this. By the time that clock hits 0 Saturday night, I don't think we're going to have every single roster question answered. That's just not how preseason works. But I do think one thing is going to be abundantly clear. We're going to know which of these guys Dallas can actually trust when the games start counting for real. And just as important, we're going to know which spots on this roster still need some outside help. That's really what Saturday night comes down to. And honestly, I can't wait to break it all down with y'all once it's over.